On nights like this, betrayal does not whisper. It screams, and its scream leaves corpses behind. It rots the heart, it eats the soul, it leaves you alive only to watch everything you love burn. This is Ngozi, once wrapped in love, her home bursting with laughter, her children fed and safe, her husband's pride her crown. But tonight, she is nothing but a ghost among the living. Rain beats against her skin, her children cling to her frail body, their eyes wide with fear and hunger. No one stops, no one speaks. The world moves past her corpse of a life, as though she were already buried. How does warmth turn to cold ash? How does trust sharpen into a blade that guts you from within? Her downfall was not sudden. It was planted like a cursed seed, watered with envy, fed with jealousy, and left to grow into a monster that devoured everything she held dear. Now, beneath this storm, only one truth claws at the night. Who betrayed her, and how much more will be lost before her story ends? Before the darkness came, there was light. Before the betrayal, there was trust. And it all began in a home filled with love. Ngozi's life was beautiful. She had a husband who loved her deeply, 3 children who filled the house with laughter, and a business that made her proud. Their home was full, not just of food and comfort, but of peace. Neighbors admired them, friends respected them, and in the eyes of many, Ngozi's marriage was the picture of happiness. Her husband was the kind of man others looked up to, hardworking, protective, and respected in the community. He cared for his family, and together, he and Ngozi built a life that many could only dream of. He never failed to provide, and his presence in the home was like a shield. In their house, there was joy, there was love, and there was trust. Each day had its rhythm. Morning prayers at the dining table, children rushing with school bags, and Ngozi balancing her business calls with the needs of the home. The evenings brought laughter around shared meals and soft conversations about the future. It was not just a life of riches and gold, but it was a life full of meaning, and that was enough for her. But every good story has a twist, and every heart that is full can sometimes attract the wrong eyes. Ijeoma, Ngozi's closest friend, was single, vibrant, and charming. To Ngozi, she was more than a friend, she was like a sister. Ijeoma knew the children by name, and they adored her. She ate at their table, laughed with their family, and stood beside Ngozi through daily life. Everyone believed her to be a blessing. Together, the 2 women shared secrets, dreams, and struggles. Ngozi would often open up about her worries and challenges, and Ijeoma listened with a smile, always ready with comforting words. To anyone watching, theirs was a friendship unbreakable, the kind of bond that drew admiration. At first, it was harmless in appearance. Ijeoma visiting more often to Ngozi. Her friend's presence was only kindness, and she welcomed her openly, believing Ijeoma to be her greatest supporter. The bond between them grew tighter. Ijeoma joined in celebrations, gave the children small gifts, and even stayed late on some evenings to help Ngozi with chores. Ngozi's trust in Ijeoma became complete. She believed she had found a true sister in her. Her husband, too, was grateful. He often said, "It is rare to find a friend like this, someone who stands by you without asking for anything in return." And Ngozi agreed. To her, Ijeoma was not just a friend, she was family. For now, everything seemed perfect. The family was happy, the children were safe, the home was strong, and the friend was close, closer than anyone could imagine. Ngozi counted her blessings daily, grateful for her husband, her children, her work, and her friend who stood by her side. To her, it felt like life could not be shaken, that her foundation was strong and her world secure. But sometimes, storms gather quietly, without warning. And though the laughter in Ngozi's home was loud, something unseen was already moving in the shadows of her life. Her joy was real, her trust was deep, but her eyes could not yet see what was coming. This was the beginning, the perfect life, the perfect family, the perfect trust. But just beyond the smiles, something waited, silent, patient, and ready to strike. Ngozi's life moved on. Her husband's care never wavered, her children thrived, and her business blossomed. To anyone looking, it was a picture of peace. But even in peace, small cracks sometimes form, cracks only visible to those who look closely. When Ngozi praised her husband in conversation, Ijeoma's smile often faltered, just for a heartbeat. Her eyes carried a flicker that most would dismiss. And whenever the talk turned to marriage, Ijeoma's words began to sharpen ever so slightly. One afternoon, Ijeoma walked into Ngozi's office with her usual cheer. She smiled at the staff, greeted them warmly, and then turned to Ngozi. "You've been working too hard," she said, tugging her friend's arm gently. "Come on, let's go and eat lunch. My treat." Ngozi hesitated at first, looking at the paperwork spread across her desk. But Ijeoma insisted until she finally agreed. They left together, chatting as they walked, and soon they were seated at a small restaurant near the office. The place was lively with the clatter of plates and the hum of midday customers. As they waited for their meal, Ijeoma leaned forward, her voice soft but sharp enough to cut through the noise around them. "Do you really think men can be trusted completely? I have seen too many stories of women who gave their all, only to find their husbands with someone else." Ngozi's hand paused halfway as she adjusted the cutlery before her. She looked at her friend, her face calm but firm. "I do not believe that. Maybe some men, yes, but not mine. My husband is not like that." Ijeoma chuckled quietly, sipping from her glass. "You speak with such confidence. But Ngozi, even walls that look strong can have cracks." Ngozi shook her head, smiling faintly. "Not this one. My husband and I understand each other. Our bond is not so easily broken." They ate in silence for a moment before Ijeoma spoke again, her tone casual, but her eyes focused. "I see how he looks tired these days. Are you sure you are not overwhelming him with all your worries? Sometimes men hide what they truly feel. Maybe he keeps quiet because he feels weighed down." Ngozi frowned slightly, her fork resting on the plate. "No, he has never told me that. He knows my heart, and I know his. We are partners in everything." Ijeoma leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable, then forced a smile. "I only speak because I care. Sometimes it's good to ask questions, that's all." Ngozi nodded politely, but in her heart, she brushed the words aside. She loved her husband. She trusted him. The words stayed with Ngozi longer than she admitted. They stirred faint questions in her heart, though she quickly buried them. Again and again, Ijeoma tried. She suggested doubt, hinted at secrets, painted shadows where there were none. But every time, Ngozi refused. Her love was too deep, her trust too strong. For Ijeoma, patience turned into frustration. Smiles gave way to clenched teeth in the dark corners of her room. She wanted what her friend had, yet her words carried no power. If Ngozi would not doubt, then something stronger would have to be done. And so, one night, Ijeoma made her way to a place most would fear to enter. The path was narrow, lined with tall grass swaying in the wind. An owl hooted in the distance. At the end stood a mud-walled hut, its doorway lit by flickering palm oil lamps. The smell of burnt herbs hung in the air. The sound of a drumbeat echoed slowly, as though the earth itself was breathing. Inside, the shrine was heavy with smoke. Carved figures lined the walls, wooden idols stained with blood, feathers scattered across the ground, cowrie shells glinting faintly in the light. A pot bubbled in the corner, filled with something dark, its steam rising into the roof thatched with palm fronds. The native doctor sat cross-legged on a mat, his face painted with chalk, his eyes sharp and unblinking. He watched as Ijeoma entered. "Why have you come?" his voice rumbled, deep and commanding. Ijeoma fell to her knees, her eyes burning with envy and anger. "I am tired," she cried. "Every day I watch her live the life that should be mine. A husband who loves her, children who adore her, a home where she is respected. And what do I have? Nothing. Nothing but people asking me why I am not married. I want her joy destroyed. I want her husband to turn his back on her. I want her business to crumble and let her go back to square one. I want her children to suffer as she has made me suffer in silence." The native doctor's eyes narrowed. He picked up a string of cowries and tossed them onto a goatskin. The shells scattered, forming strange patterns. He nodded slowly. "What you ask will cost you," he said. "It is not small. To turn a man's heart against his own blood, to blind him with false love, it is strong work. Are you ready to pay the price?" Ijeoma's voice trembled, but her rage held her steady. "I will pay. I will give whatever it takes. Just give me her husband. Make him hate her. Make him see me, and only me." He leaned closer, his breath thick with the scent of herbs. "So it shall be. But remember, once you start, there is no turning back." Ijeoma bowed her head. "I do not care. I have waited long enough." The drums grew louder, the fire sparked, and the shrine seemed to come alive with whispers. The native doctor began to chant, his words heavy, calling unseen forces into the room. Ijeoma closed her eyes, her fists clenched, her heart burning with a desire that refused to die. Meanwhile, far away, Ngozi sat at home, tucking her children into bed. She smiled as her husband entered the room, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. To her, life was safe. And so, while one woman slept in peace, another woman had already opened a door that could never be closed. The change wasn't loud, but it was steady. Too steady to ignore, too strange to explain. At first, it seemed harmless. A forgotten smile, a shorter answer, a sigh heavier than usual. But with each passing day, the man Ngozi loved began to slip away from her. His voice, once gentle, now carried an edge. His laughter grew rare, his patience thin, and soon, the warmth of their home began to feel colder than Ngozi had ever known. He was no longer the man who greeted her with a smile every evening. His laughter came less often, and his words carried a new sharpness. Where once he asked about her day, now he gave short replies. Where once he embraced his children warmly, now he pushed them aside with irritation. The change was not sudden. It came like a shadow lengthening at dusk. A forgotten kiss here, a harsh tone there. At first, Ngozi dismissed it. He is tired, she told herself. Work is weighing on him. It will pass. And when she shared her worry with Ijeoma, her friend was quick to respond. Men are like that, Ijeoma said gently, resting a hand on her shoulder. Sometimes they carry burdens they cannot explain. Give him space. Ngozi sighed, nodding. Yes, he just needs time. He will come around. Ijeoma's face softened with sympathy, but as soon as Ngozi turned away, a sly smile crept across her lips. Days turned into weeks, and the distance in her home grew wider. The man who once spent evenings playing with his children now sat in silence, his brow furrowed, his patience gone. He snapped at the smallest mistakes, spilled water, misplaced shoes, unfinished homework. The children began to shrink in his presence, their laughter quieter, their joy dimmed. Ngozi's heart ached, but she held on to hope. He loves us, she whispered to herself at night. This is not who he is. Something may be troubling him, but it will not last. Ijeoma, however, became more present than ever. She visited often, always at the right time, when Ngozi was weary, when her husband was cold, when the atmosphere in the house felt heavy. She spoke with patience, with understanding, always positioning herself as the friend who could see what Ngozi could not. One afternoon, as Ngozi shared her pain, Ijeoma leaned close. You must take care of yourself. Sometimes, men withdraw for a reason. Try not to push him. Don't argue. Let him be. Ngozi nodded, tears in her eyes. I only want peace. I do not want to lose the man I married. Ijeoma squeezed her hand. You will not lose him. I am here for you. And again, that same smile, hidden when Ngozi turned away, rested on her face. The poison spread slowly, unseen, but it was working. The warmth of family prayers grew cold, and the once joyful home felt heavier with each passing day. Ngozi tried everything she knew, preparing his favorite meals, speaking gently, involving him in the children's activities, but nothing seemed to break through the wall that had risen between them. To the people, they still looked like the perfect family. The neighbors still greeted them with respect. But behind closed doors, Ngozi's heart was breaking. She clung to the memory of the man who had once loved her with all his strength. She clung to her faith that the storm would pass. But storms, once called, do not easily fade. And this one had only begun. Ngozi did not know that the very friend she leaned on for comfort was the same hand guiding the storm into her home. And so she defended her husband. She excused his behavior. She carried the weight of her home alone, never suspecting that the seed planted in secret was already bearing fruit. Family dinners, once the heartbeat of their home, began to lose their warmth. The table that used to ring with stories and laughter now sat in heavy silence. He ate quickly, rarely joining in conversation. If Ngozi tried to speak, he cut her off. If the children whispered among themselves, he scolded them. Even the clink of a spoon against a plate felt too loud. What was once fellowship began to feel like punishment. And in those moments, when the atmosphere was at its heaviest, Ijeoma always seemed to appear. Sometimes at the door with a pot of soup, claiming she cooked too much. Sometimes at the gate with fruit for the children. Other times, she came simply to check on Ngozi. But her presence was never empty. She would pull Ngozi aside, lowering her voice. You see how he is these days? It is not ordinary. Maybe his heart is no longer where it used to be. Ngozi shook her head. No, he is stressed. That is all. I will not think otherwise. Then Ijeoma would move to the husband, her tone gentle, her face full of sympathy. You look tired. You shouldn't carry so much alone. Sometimes women don't understand the weight men carry, but I do. Her words wrapped around him like a comfort Ngozi no longer provided, at least not in his eyes clouded by the poison. And slowly, the line blurred. Ijeoma was no longer just a visitor. She became the presence that arrived when the family broke into silence. She became the listener when Ngozi's words fell on deaf ears. She became the hand that reached out when the children dared not. As if this were not enough, shadows reached into Ngozi's business as well. Orders that had been secured for weeks suddenly collapsed. A contract she celebrated only weeks before was canceled without clear reason. Funds she expected never arrived. Suppliers who once trusted her began to raise questions. She sat at her desk one evening, staring at numbers that no longer made sense. "How is this happening?" she whispered. It was as though unseen hands were tearing down everything she had built. When she told Ijeoma of her struggles, her friend sighed deeply. "Ngozi, when misfortune comes, it rarely comes alone. Sometimes these things are signs. Or maybe you are worrying too much which is affecting your business. Just calm down." Ngozi forced a smile, though her heart was breaking. "It is well. God will not abandon me. My husband will not leave me. This storm will pass." But as the days passed, the storm only grew louder. Her husband's temper, her children's fear, her business slipping away, and Ijeoma's shadow ever closer. Everything was unraveling, one thread at a time. The storm finally broke. It came not with whispers, but with thunder. One evening, after a tense dinner, Ngozi's husband turned to her suddenly. His eyes, once kind, now burned with suspicion. His voice was sharp, almost cutting. "Ngozi," he said, "tell me the truth. Who have you been seeing behind my back?" Ngozi froze, her spoon slipping from her hand and clattering against the plate. She stared at him, shocked. What? What are you saying?" He leaned forward, his tone harsher. "Don't pretend. I have heard the things you say, the way you complain that I no longer satisfy you, that you carry this family alone. Do you think I don't know?" Ngozi's heart sank. The words sounded familiar, private confessions she had shared with Ijeoma in moments of weakness. Words she thought were safe, words she thought were guarded. Now they returned like arrows, twisted and poisoned. Tears welled in her eyes. "I would never betray you. I have never been unfaithful. You are my husband, my only love. Please, you must believe me." But his face was stone. The poison had done its work. "Lies," he thundered, slamming his hand on the table. "You will not stay in this house another second. Pack your things and leave." Ngozi, heavy with child, dropped to her knees. She clutched his leg, her tears falling on the tiled floor. "Please, do not do this. Where will I go with the children? Please, for the sake of our unborn child, have mercy." The children, frightened by the raised voices, rushed into the room. Their cries filled the air as they clung to their mother. "Papa, please don't send us away. We didn't do anything." Their small hands tugged at his clothes, their tears soaking his shirt. But he pushed them aside, his heart hardened by the unseen chains binding him. Ijeoma, standing at the doorway, placed a hand on her chest as though pained. She moved quickly to comfort the husband. "You are doing the right thing," she whispered. "A woman who cannot be trusted has no place here." Ngozi turned her eyes to her friend, desperate, broken. "Ijeoma, you know me. Tell him the truth. Tell him I would never do such a thing." But Ijeoma's eyes, when they met hers, carried no warmth. The mask of sisterhood fell away, if only for a second. Her face hardened, her lips curved into a faint smile no one else noticed. And in that moment, Ngozi saw the truth. Her greatest friend was the hand behind her destruction. By nightfall, Ngozi and her children were cast out, doors shut behind them, their cries lost to the night. The house that once held their laughter was no longer theirs. Her business accounts had already been emptied, her contracts canceled, and everything she worked for slipped away with the turn of a key in a locked door. In a single night, Ngozi lost it all: her home, her comfort, her livelihood, and her dignity. On the cold street, beneath the flickering light of a broken lamppost, Ngozi gathered her children close. She wiped their tears, though her own never stopped falling. Her swollen belly ached, her body weak, her spirit crushed. The children leaned against her, trembling, asking questions she could not answer. That night, the woman who once had everything laid her head on bare ground. Her children huddled around her. The sky offered no comfort, the earth no mercy. And so it began, Ngozi and her children's first night on the street. The streets became their home. Where once Ngozi's children had soft beds and warm blankets, now they lay on cold cement floors outside locked shops. She used her wrapper to cover them, shielding their little bodies from the chill of the night. The walls that once held their laughter were replaced by shuttered doors and empty corridors. Day after day, they begged for food. Sometimes, a passerby would give them little money, enough to buy groundnuts or a handful of bread. Other times, they went to sleep with nothing but water to silence the growls in their stomachs. The children, who once played freely in their compound, now sat quietly by the roadside, their eyes sunken, their smiles fading. One night, as they huddled together, Ngozi thought of her parents. Their house was far away, in another state. If she could just get there, maybe there would be shelter, maybe food, maybe a chance to start again. But the thought crushed her heart almost as quickly as it came. She had no money for transport, not even enough to pay for a bus ticket. Her phone, her only way to call for help, was left behind in the house when her husband cast her out. She had been thrown into the street with nothing but the clothes on her back and the children by her side. She wrapped her arms tighter around them, whispering, "If only we could get to Grandpa's house, just one journey away." But the words died in her throat. Even if she tried, the road was too far to walk, and her body too heavy with pregnancy to endure such a journey. Then the sky opened, and the rain poured without mercy. The streets flooded, water soaking their clothes, drenching the thin wrapper that tried to keep them warm. Ngozi gathered her children under a small shop shade, but the rain beat through, leaving them shivering in the cold. Her swollen belly ached as she held them close, her tears mixing with the rain. They huddled together, trembling, while strangers walked past. Some glanced, but most turned their faces away. A man with an umbrella crossed to the other side of the road. A woman selling roasted corn shook his head and kept walking. No one stopped. No one asked. The world, which once admired Ngozi, now passed her like she was invisible. The humiliation cut deep. She remembered the days when neighbors greeted her with respect, when her family name carried dignity. Now, even beggars eyed her with pity. She whispered prayers under her breath, her voice shaking. "God, please, don't let my children die like this. Give me strength, send us help." But the suffering only grew worse. Food became scarcer, her strength weaker. The children's cheeks hollowed. Their tiny hands clutched her gown as though it were the only safety left in the world. Their eyes, once bright with dreams, now carried the dull ache of hunger. Ngozi forced herself to stand, to smile at the children though her heart was breaking. "We will survive," she whispered to them, though her own voice trembled. She led them to a corner where the sun reached, drying their wet clothes, trying to warm their shivering bodies. But survival came slowly, painfully. Each day felt heavier than the last. And with each passing moment, the question pressed harder on her soul. How much more could they endure? The days on the street stretched like endless chains, but nothing prepared Ngozi for what came next. Her youngest child, the one she carried closest to her chest every night, began to cough. At first, she thought it was just the cold from the rain-soaked nights. But soon, the cough deepened, his tiny body shivering with fever. His skin grew hot to the touch, his lips dry, his breathing shallow. Ngozi's heart pounded as she pressed her palm to his forehead. It burned with heat. She gathered him in her arms, whispering prayers, rocking him as though her love alone could drive the sickness away. But the fever only worsened. Desperate, she rushed to a small clinic at the edge of the street, her other children trailing behind, hungry and tired. She begged the nurse at the counter, "Please, my baby is sick. He needs help. He is burning up." The nurse glanced at the child, then at Ngozi's worn-out clothes and empty hands. Her tone was flat. "Madam, do you have money? Without payment, we cannot attend to him." Ngozi shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I have nothing. Please, just help him. I will find a way to pay later. I am begging you." But the woman turned away. "We cannot do charity here. Take him to the general hospital." Ngozi staggered back into the street, holding her child. The general hospital was far, too far for her weak body and her shivering children to reach. She tried another small clinic, only to be turned away again. Money spoke louder than her tears. As evening fell, she sat under a dim streetlight, her back against a cold wall. Her baby's eyes fluttered weakly, his cries now faint whimpers. She rocked him, humming softly through her tears, the same lullaby she used to sing when he was healthy and strong. Then, slowly, his breathing grew shallower, his chest rising and falling with painful effort. Ngozi pressed him closer, whispering, "Stay with me. Please, my baby, stay with me." But the night was merciless. In her arms, as her tears drenched his tiny face, the child grew still. Her scream tore through the silence of the street. "No, why me, Lord? Why me?" Her voice cracked, echoing into the night, carrying all the grief of a mother who had lost more than she could bear. Her other children clung to her, weeping, their small voices trembling as they cried for their brother. In the days that followed, when all hope seemed lost, mercy found her. It came in the form of a stranger, a middle-aged man who sold goods in the nearby market. He had seen her sitting by the roadside many times with her children, their clothes torn, their eyes hollow from hunger. But on this day, he saw her carrying a lifeless child wrapped in her arms, her face broken beyond words. His heart could not let him walk past. He stopped, removed his cap, and crouched beside her. "Madam," he said gently, "I don't know your story, but I can see your pain. Take this. It is not much, but it will help you leave this place." He pressed some folded money into her hand. Ngozi looked at him, her tears falling fresh. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but her voice failed. All she could do was bow her head as he walked away, glancing back once with pity in his eyes. That small act of kindness was enough to get her and the children to her parents' house in another state. But the help came too late to save her little one. She traveled with grief heavy on her chest, her children by her side, and one empty space that could never be filled. And while she carried her loss like a wound that would never heal, somewhere else in the city, music played. Laughter rang out. Ijeoma, dressed in bright colors, stood at a party, her glass raised high. At her side was Ngozi's husband, smiling, his arm draped around her shoulders. She was having the time of her life. When Ngozi finally reached her parents' house, she was welcomed with open arms. Her father, though weak, held her tightly and wept, while her mother clung to the children, murmuring blessings over them. For the first time in weeks, Ngozi and her children slept on real beds, under a roof of love. The pain of loss was still sharp, but in her parents' home, she found a little rest. In time, she gave birth to her child. It was not an easy delivery, but when the baby's cry rang out, it felt like God whispering hope into her broken heart. Each night after, she prayed fervently. The betrayal had stripped her of everything, but her faith became her strongest weapon. In the stillness of the night, she cried, "O Lord, fight for me. Expose the hand behind my pain. Let truth speak." Meanwhile, far away, Ijeoma's world began to crumble. Her nights were haunted with restless dreams. She woke drenched in sweat, hearing voices whisper her name in anger. The man she fought for sat beside her, but grew distant, troubled, and uneasy. Her beauty seemed to fade, her body weakened, and her charm no longer carried the same power. Panicked, she went back to the shrine. The native doctor's eyes were cold as he looked at her. "You asked for fire," he said, "but fire burns the one who carries it. If you want to keep what you took, you must give something greater, something you will not want to part with." Ijeoma's face tightened. "What do you mean? I have done everything you asked." The native doctor leaned forward, his voice heavy. "You must sacrifice blood from your own family. Without it, what you built will collapse." Her heart raced. She had no husband, no children, no family she was willing to give. Fear spread across her face. She shook her head. "I cannot do that." His voice was final. "Then prepare yourself. What is not finished will be undone. The spirits do not wait." From that moment, everything began to wear off. The power she held over Ngozi's husband started to break. The sickness that plagued her body grew worse, her beauty drained, her nights filled with terror. Back in her parents' home, Ngozi continued to seek God with all her heart. One Sunday, she went to church as usual, carrying her newborn in her arms and her older children beside her. As the congregation lifted their voices in prayer, something shifted in the atmosphere. The pastor in the service gave a prophetic word and spoke boldly. "There is a woman here who has been cast out of her husband's house because of lies and wickedness. The friend she trusted became the enemy she did not see. But today, the Lord says he has exposed it. The chains are broken, the veil is lifted, and you will be restored." Ngozi fell to her knees, her tears flowing. In that moment, she knew God had revealed the source of her pain, and he had broken the power behind it. And miles away, Ijeoma screamed in her sleep, as if unseen hands had ripped her secret into the light. But the worst was yet to come. It began suddenly, one morning after they woke up. The sun had just risen, light spilling into the room, but inside the house, a strange heaviness filled the air. His head throbbed as though something pressed against his skull, and his chest tightened with a weight he could not explain. He sat on the edge of the bed, breathing heavily, while Igioma stirred beside him. She reached out to touch him, but he flinched. For the first time, her presence felt wrong. Her hand, once welcomed, now burned against his skin. He turned his face away, confusion rising inside him. Then, like a floodgate breaking, images began to rush through his mind. He saw Ngozi's smile, her hands serving him meals, the nights she knelt beside him in prayer. He heard the children's voices calling Papa, and remembered how they once ran into his arms with joy. He saw their faces again, faces that had once looked at him with love. The more the memories came, the more his heart pounded, his chest heaving as truth crashed against him like waves. He called Ngozi's name for the first time in a long while. His body trembled, his eyes wide. The veil that had blinded him lifted. Every lie dissolved, every charm broken. His heart beat violently in his chest as clarity returned. He staggered to his feet, holding his head in his hands. But Igioma was quick to act. She rose from the bed, her voice sharp and urgent. Don't let her fool you again. Ngozi betrayed you. She was unfaithful, and that's why you sent her away. You cannot go back to her. She never loved you the way I do. Her words stung his ears, but his spirit recoiled. He glared at her with a fire she had never seen before. Enough, he thundered, shoving her hand away. I see clearly now. She never betrayed me. It was you. You deceived me. You destroyed my home. Igioma's eyes flickered with panic. She tried to smile, to soften her voice. You are confused. These thoughts are not real. She is gone. Forget her. I am here with you. But he pushed past her, his voice breaking. You will never be her. You will never be mine, Ngozi. His desperation surged. He grabbed his phone, fumbling with trembling hands, trying to call Ngozi. But every number he dialed rang empty. His breath quickened. He remembered too late. He had thrown her out with nothing, not even a phone. Where is she? Where did she go? His voice cracked, echoing through the house. Igioma tried to grab his arm, but he pulled free, storming out. He could no longer stay in the comfort of lies. Street after street, he searched, asking strangers if they had seen a woman with children. His voice broke with every call. Ngozi. Ngozi. He described her face, the children's ages, his words tumbling out in desperation. But no one knew. Finally, a middle-aged shopkeeper looked at him with pity. Your wife? She suffered on these streets. But she went to her father's house. If you love her, go quickly. His heart raced. He did not rest until he reached that place. The journey was long, but guilt gave him no peace until he stood before her parents' door, his face weary. The sun was high when he arrived at Ngozi's father's house. His steps were hurried, his breath heavy, his face drawn with guilt and fear. He had rushed without stopping, his heart pounding as though it would break his chest. The moment he saw her standing at the doorway, his knees weakened. She held her newborn in her arms, her face weary yet radiant with quiet strength. Two children clung to her sides, their small eyes peering curiously at him. He froze. Something was wrong. There should have been three. His eyes darted around, searching. His lips trembled as he whispered, Where is my son? Where is my little one? Ngozi's eyes filled instantly with tears. She clutched her newborn tighter, her body shaking. The silence was louder than thunder. At last, she broke, her voice heavy with sorrow. He is gone. I held him in my arms until he took his last breath. I begged, I cried, but no one would help us. He died in the street. Her husband staggered back as though struck. His body shook, and then he collapsed to his knees, tears pouring freely. God, what have I done? My blindness has cost me my own child. He pressed his forehead to the ground, his voice breaking. Ngozi, please forgive me. Forgive me, I beg you, forgive me. Ngozi's lips quivered as she looked down at the man she once loved, now broken before her. Slowly, she stepped closer, her voice trembling. You asked for forgiveness, but do you know the depth of my pain? Do you know how I begged strangers for help, only to be turned away? Do you know what it feels like to watch our baby die in the cold night? He wept louder, his cries echoing in the compound. I was blind. The devil deceived me. I cast away the woman who was my treasure. I destroyed my own house. I deserve no mercy. But please, if only for the children, forgive me. Her father stepped forward, his staff striking the ground. It's enough. He looked at his son-in-law with weary eyes. The devil blinded you, but God has opened your eyes. Learn from this. A man without God is vulnerable to the enemy. Let your life and family be rooted in God. Without him, you will fall again. Her mother placed a hand on Ngozi's shoulder, her voice tender but firm. My daughter, the Lord has carried you through this fire and revealed the truth. God has decided to show you and your family mercy. Wipe your tears. If you will rebuild, then let God be the foundation. Let your marriage, your children, your entire life be centered on Him. They all thanked God for exposing the wickedness and bringing the family back together. That same day, they returned to their home. But as they stepped into the compound, they found Ijeoma. She was hurriedly dragging her box of clothes in order to leave, her face frantic, her hands trembling. The moment she saw Ngozi, her husband, and the children, she froze. Her eyes darted wildly, her mouth opened, and then the words burst out like a flood. Yes, I did it. I destroyed this marriage. I went to the shrine, I used charms, I poisoned your husband's mind against you. I smiled in your face while stabbing you in the back. I wanted your home, your life, your joy. Her voice cracked as neighbors gathered, whispering in shock. Ngozi stood still, her children clinging to her gown in fear, while her husband lowered his head in shame. Ijeoma's voice grew shrill, her body shaking. But look at me now. I have nothing. Nothing. You took everything from me. I deserve all. Suddenly, she screamed and tore at her clothes. Her eyes rolled, her hair loosened, and madness overtook her. She staggered, laughed hysterically, then screamed again, running into the street as neighbors gasped in fear. She had confessed before all, and the consequences of her evil deeds fell on her. And so, Ngozi's family stepped back into their home. The walls once tainted with betrayal now echoed with prayer and thanksgiving. Her husband, humbled and broken, clung to God and his family. The children laughed again, their voices ringing with hope. Their home became a house of prayer, an altar of gratitude. And so, after all the storms, they lived not just happily ever after, but faithfully ever after.